Hey guys, welcome back to Healing Fibromyalgia's YouTube channel. I'm so excited to have you back with me. My name's Paula, and as you know from these videos, I've been sharing my journey about healing my fibromyalgia, the journey that's taken me over the last 18 months, and the things that I want to share with you in the hope that you might be able to feel better and relieve some of your symptoms as well. So we've talked a little bit about my journey. We've talked about some of the things that I initially did to try and feel better. But I think it's probably really important to talk about what actually is fibromyalgia. What are the symptoms that are most prevalent? And also, how does it really affect our body? Because so many of you that I talk to really worry about being judged by people. So many people say that other people around them just don't understand. They're really worried about having to justify their symptoms to people, worried about not going out because people will judge either how they are or should they be poorlier than they're presenting. And I think it's really important that we talk about this kind of stress and the things that really do impact people's day-to-day lives. So let's start with what is fibromyalgia? So, fibromyalgia isn't just one thing. Fibromyalgia is a collection of symptoms that the doctors don't really understand why you have so much pain and don't really understand why you have this group of symptoms. And what your doctor should have done on the run up to you being diagnosed is to do some blood tests. And the blood tests are there so that they can make sure that there is nothing else going on in the background, because once you get your diagnosis of fibromyalgia, quite often the doctors, every time you go back in there, even if it's a new symptom, they will think it falls into that group of fibromyalgia. So we've got to rule out that there isn't anything else underlying that's causing you to have these symptoms. So they do some blood tests, not so that they can diagnose fibro, but so that they can rule out other things that are going on. So hopefully you've had some blood tests done. Hopefully you've talked to either your GP or a rheumatologist and they've come to the point where they've agreed that it's fibromyalgia. But really, fibromyalgia is just a collection of things that they group in together that a lot of people have had these symptoms for, and they're calling it fibromyalgia. They don't really know what is causing these symptoms, and unfortunately, they don't have a better test, or they don't have a better solution than clumping this into fibromyalgia, and that is your diagnosis moving forward. Now, really, the research that I've been doing over the time in my healing journey has led me to understand that fibromyalgia is massively to do with your nervous system. The doctors are now saying that actually fibromyalgia could have been caused by a significant event in the early part of your life. So in the first 18 years of your life, you may have had a viral infection. I know a lot of people have had things like glandular fever. Those kind of viruses can cause a real significant impact on our nervous system, but also it could be a significant event like a trauma. And in the first 18 years of your life, when your body is growing and your nervous system is growing and developing, those significant impacts on our development can have an issue on how our nervous system is formed in the first place. So if we're in a state where something has compromised our nervous system developing in the way that it should, we're always in a situation where it could also be really easily overwhelmed, because if it wasn't developed in the way that it should in the first place, then it's always going to be compromised. So now, whenever we get to the point where we're adding additional stresses into our day-to-day life, that's going to have an impact on our nervous system. Now, for those of you that don't understand, our nervous system are our nerves. They go from our brain, they go all the way down our spinal cord, and then they go out to all the different areas in our body. Now, those nerves are continually sending signals to our brain so that our brain can understand what's going on, both in our environment outside of our body, but also in our environment inside our body. And somewhere along the way, the signals that your nerves are sending to your brain are getting confused. I know when my fibromyalgia was really, really bad, I couldn't walk. I had so much pain in my legs that I physically couldn't walk. But if I put my legs on an MRI machine or under an X-ray, I know that the doctors would not be able to see any physical damage. The problem is that the signals going from the nerves in my legs up to my brain and how my brain was receiving that information, there was something going wrong along the way. And that miscommunication of nerve signals going to your brain are why we get these fibro symptoms in the first place. So those stresses that we put on our body have an impact on our nervous system. Now, when I talk about stresses, I'm talking about things that could potentially be a physical stress, but also things that could be an emotional stress as well, because our brains, as clever as they are not capable of recognizing whether or not pain comes from a physical form or from an emotional form. So there is layers and layers to understanding how we can heal our fibro, because it's understanding how we can take this pressure and this stress off our nervous system. So one of the stresses that we could look at, if we were going to look at the physical stresses, is what we're putting into our body and what we're eating and how hard we're making our physical body work to create the energy that we need just to be alive. Which is why when I talk about changing your diet, it's really important to do that, because we have to take that physical stress off of our nervous system. We could also be talking about, well, physically, how much are we doing with our body? Are we overwhelming our body with stress because we're just exhausted, because we're absolutely shattered, we're doing too much? It could be that our body can't cope because we're filling it with inflammatory oils, and that inflammation is making our bodies work way harder than it needs to work, and that inflammation is making things more difficult and more painful than it needs to be. But we have to also understand that stresses can come from an emotional side of our being. And we need to understand the impact that we have on our physical body from our emotional well-being stance. If we were looking at a small child and they came to us and they were really, really worried about something and they'd got a tummy ache, we wouldn't necessarily be surprised that they got a tummy ache, because we are all very aware that emotional stress can cause physical symptoms. But somewhere along the way, we've lost that and that understanding that how we are stressing and how we are worrying emotionally is having a physical impact on us. So when I talk about physical stresses, emotional stresses, I'm talking about things like, how are you treating yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Do you have a sense of self-worth? Are you proud of yourself when you're looking in the mirror? Are you worried because you don't fit into a certain demographic of people? Do you worry that you aren't good enough for your peer group? Do you worry that you should weigh less? All of those are emotional stresses that we're putting on ourselves, and actually that's putting our bodies under huge amounts of pressure and huge amounts of pain, and our nervous system is becoming overwhelmed. But it could be things like, how is your life? Do you have a really stressful job? Is it that you're really stressed because the children are stressing you out, or you've got a toxic relationship that's having an impact on your stress levels day to day and having an impact on your nervous system? Or could it even be that you've got huge amounts of past trauma that you've never worked through the emotional impact of? And in your normal day-to-day life, things are triggering your trauma that you didn't even realise was happening. And it's drawing you back into a space where you feel so emotionally overwhelmed. It could be one of those things. It could be all of those things. And if we want to start looking at how we heal our fibro, we need to understand that our nervous systems just cannot cope with all this extra pressure that we're putting on them. And it's like a layer. We are layering stress in every single aspect of our lives. And it's not until we stop and we think about where the stresses are coming from and how we can relieve them and how we can reframe the stress so that it doesn't physically affect our bodies, these are the positions that we're going to start to see some healing, and these are the situations where we're going to start to see some change. Now, I'm not saying that this is easy. There are so many things that you could be doing in your life that are making your nervous system overwhelmed. But we need to stop. We need to take hold, and we need to really think about what is it that's affecting you. Because I guarantee 90% of people won't be feeding their body properly. So 90% of the people that are watching this video are probably going to feel better when you change your diet. But changing your diet isn't the only thing that you can do, and it's not the only thing that's going to help relieve your stressors. Are you really, really anxious all the time? And are you constantly worried? If you are living in that state, your body's releasing so many chemicals. It's releasing the kind of chemicals that you would be expected to release if you were in your fight or flight mode. So if your body's releasing huge amounts of cortisol all the time because it's so stressed out and it's so worried and it's in that emergency kind of run away from a bear attack kind of mode, then your body is living on the wrong kind of chemicals, and there's no long-term solution to that. We have to look at the things that we can do. We have to look at the things that we can change, and ultimately it takes a lot of self-reflection to do that, but it is so worth it. So this is just a really quick introduction to your nervous system, to what fibromyalgia really is, but also to some of the things that could help you moving forward to make your symptoms less and to have less impact on your day-to-day life. So I'm going to continue making these videos. We're going to talk more about the physical things that we can do and the emotional things that we can do to try and relieve some of that pressure and that stress on our nervous system. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really, really appreciate it. Keep liking, keep sharing. I'm going to keep making these videos, and I really, really can't wait to see you again next time.